This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show. And our moonlighter for today is Brooklyn McMurray. Now, Brooklyn McMurray, she was a fantastic gymnast at the Division I level over at West Virginia, and we're coming off of an Olympic year. And of course, during the Olympics, it's like the one time out of every 4 years that all of a sudden I, along with many Americans and many people around the world, get interested in gymnastics again. And the big story this past year, of course, was Simone Biles coming into the Olympics. She's one of the most decorated American Olympians of all time. She's one of the greatest American athletes of all time. And she's on the big stage again, and then she gets what's called the twisties. So not only was she a big story coming in to the Olympics, but also while she was there, she had a big story around her because of this issue called the twisties that came up. And so I wanted to bring on our very first gymnast here on the podcast to not only hear Brooklyn's story, which is amazing in its own right. Like, Brooklyn comes from a family of athletes. She was an awesome gymnast at West Virginia. And during her time there, she actually gave birth to her first child while she was in school, while she was competing. She hardly took any time off after she gave birth to her oldest son, Jet, before she went back to competing. So it's a pretty incredible story. Shows you just how amazing mothers and women are. And I wanted to bring that story here on the podcast, but I also wanted her to educate me and our listeners out there about, the finer things of gymnastics. I don't know much about the sport of gymnastics other than what I watch every 3 to 4 years on the Olympics. So I wanted to talk to Brooklyn, whose mother was a gymnast. Her sister is a gymnast. She was a fantastic gymnast herself. So what's it like to grow up in a world of gymnastics and with gymnasts all around you? Is it similar to growing up with baseball, football, basketball? I really don't know until I had the chance to sit down and talk with Brooklyn about it. And I enjoyed every minute of this conversation because she's such an awesome person to talk to and such a great athlete. And the way this episode came to be, you probably recognize the last name McMurray, because just 3 weeks ago, I had her husband, Jason McMurray, on the podcast along with Zach Coppola and Spencer Navin to talk about the grind of college and minor league baseball. And after I set up that interview, my wife, Tori, says to me, she says, well, Jason's not even the best athlete in his own family. Brooklyn's a way better athlete than Jason. Why don't you have Brooklyn on the podcast? And after Tori said that, it was kind of like one of those duh moments. It's like, of course, Brooklyn's a better athlete than Jason. And not only that, but her story of carrying Jet while in college and then giving birth to him and then going back to compete at an all Big 12 level after that, it's remarkable. And I've never heard of anyone else doing something like this, especially in a high impact sport like gymnastics. So this was a really fun episode here on the Moonlight Graham Show. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. And if you like what we're doing here, make sure to subscribe to our podcast. Leave us a 5-star review. Follow us on social media. We love hearing from you guys each and every week. So here it is, today's episode with Moonlighter, Brooklyn McMurray. Brooklyn, you are our first gymnast that we've had here on the Moonlight Graham Show. I hope you feel honored because it's a pretty big honor.
It is an honor.
So I was told that you don't love talking about yourself.
No, not at all.
Most of the people that we have here on the pod have no problem at all talking about themselves, namely your husband. Your husband had no problem talking about himself at all. But we'll try to make this easy on you. So thank you so much for joining us.
Sounds good. I'm ready.
So you're our first gymnast. And as I'm watching the Olympics this past year, gymnastics is one of those sports where most of Americans, we follow it like every 4 years, right? When it comes around for the Olympics. Mm-hmm. So the big thing this year was like Simone Biles, one of the greatest athletes in American history, not just gymnastics, but athletes. She has, I don't know, like a panic attack kind of deal. She gets the twisties, and nobody really, I had never heard of the twisties before. Never, I've heard of like the yips in baseball, the yips in golf. And that's kind of how they started explaining the twisties. So when you heard this term, the twisties, that Simone Biles had, did you know what they were talking about?
It is like a core memory in every gymnast's mind. It's like
Really?
immediately you know exactly what she's talking about. I can tell you probably every gymnast has been through it at least once. And it's just something you don't forget happening. And it's something that's really hard to overcome too, which is why this was such a big deal in the Olympics, obviously. So what it is it's almost like a mental block type thing. Gymnastics is a very visual sport, which, side note, most gymnasts keep their eyes open when they're doing these skills. I was not one of those people.
Really?
I closed my eyes for everything I did, every event.
On purpose or?
I guess it's just something I started doing when I first started, and it's just how I did it ever since. So close my eyes, and it's kind of a big deal because obviously you need to see where you're going to be landing and you need to see where you're at in the air. But for me, it made me dizzy. I didn't like seeing things. It disoriented me. So anyway, that's just a little side note for what this actually is. So I said it's a visual thing. If you can't picture yourself doing a skill, any particular skill, you simply can't do it. It is... it's just one of those things where if you can't picture yourself doing it, you can't see it in your head as it's going on. You can't, it's almost like you can't even begin to do it. And if you attempt it, you're going to get lost, like we saw her do on vault, and come crashing down. And it's terrifying. I'm going to compare it to something that sounds dramatic, but it's exactly how it feels. Being dropped out of an airplane with no parachute, free falling, just absolutely free falling, having no idea where you're at. And
you have that type of terror.
That is the terror you feel. Yes.
So I'm a little surprised right now. Obviously, I haven't talked to a lot of gymnasts.
Yeah.
That this is this common. You
Yes.
said every gymnast has experienced this in some form.
I would assume so. Yes.
So you've experienced it.
Yes. A couple times. And it is scary. And what's scary about it is that you don't know how long it's going to last. So it can be for one turn, one skill, and then it's over. It can last days, weeks, months. And that's another part of the reason it was so scary at the Olympics. She wasn't sure how long it would last. And there's no way to, quote unquote, snap out of it.
Yeah, it's not like tape the ankle up and,
No.
and head back out there.
Nothing like that.
When you had it, how long did it last?
No more than a few turns, like no more than a full practice. So I was fortunate in that aspect. But I mean, there are some gymnasts that get it and can't come back from it.
Yeah.
Which is obviously
kind of like the yips in baseball or golf. It's like some people, it might last a month,
Right.
a round, or some people, they quit because of it. Mm-hmm. But this seems more common and also more dangerous. It's one thing to not be able to hit a golf ball the way you
Right.
want it to. It's another thing to go flying through the air upside down.
It's
and
free falling.
potentially spaz out in the middle of
Exactly.
the air and fall on your head.
Exactly.
Did you ever see anybody like really get hurt from this?
Does myself count?
So you really?
I had a really scary vault. I had the twisties. I was doing Yurchenko full.
Excuse me? What was, what did you just say?
It's called a Yurchenko full.
Okay.
It's where you do a round off onto the board, back handspring onto the vault. This is the most common one you'd probably seen if you've seen one. And then you do some sort of flipping twist, and mine just happened to be a full. This was one of the skills that this happened most commonly for me. I rebounded off my hands. I was in the air starting to twist. I got halfway around and I completely lost where I was. And I was 4 feet in the air at least. And I came down and my ACL was torn. I got so lost in the air and I came landing down on my side and it caught my foot just so that my knee twisted inward and completely tore my ACL, MCL, PCL, like meniscus, it was carnage.
And was this before you went to West Virginia then?
Yes.
So I had seen that you had hurt your shoulder and then you had also hurt your knee. And so this was, or have you hurt your knee more than once?
That was the first time I tore my ACL. I've had 2 ACL surgeries. Wow. Yeah.
How's your body feel now after a gymnastics career?
Damaged.
Like, what hurts more, the shoulder or the knee?
Definitely my knee. My shoulder doesn't really give me any problems anymore. My knee is pretty bad. It's like if it's raining outside, my knee aches. You know, it just little things like that. I mean, getting on the floor to play with the kids, my knee's just destroyed.
I had an ACL, and, you know, at that time, this was 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually, it was like 17 years ago I had the surgery. You know, I had some meniscus damage too,
Mm-hmm.
and they just, at that time, they just kind of shaved down, you know, whatever
Yeah.
was damaged. And so
Sure.
I have less of a meniscus in my left knee than right knee.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel you. When it gets cold, and when I got to pick up fits off the floor, and I'm like down on my knees, and I got to just go from flat on my knees to getting up, it's like a struggle with my hurt knee.
Yeah, it's
So
tough.
was it the same knee twice for you?
Yes. So, not to get into the gory details of it, but they actually found a kid about my age. They gave me a cadaver ACL. They said, this was from a young man, strong young man. This should really hold up for you. I'm like, oh, great. So they gave me this ACL. And 2 years later, I'm at one of my first practices at West Virginia, and it tears again. And my meniscus went with it again. And it was just, it's one of those things, you've done it, you know, instantly.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, God, again? Like,
Yeah, they come out and run and do the test, and you're like, no, I heard it.
my trainer, my freshman year when I tore it the second time, he was like, no, I think it's fine. Because I was, you know, you can walk after so long,
yeah.
you know, but it's loose. So he was like, you know, I think it's fine. I was like, I think you're full of crap. I know exactly what happened.
Right.
Like, let's just get this over with, you know?
Yeah, a lot of times your body gets so tense that all the tests that they're doing are overcompensating for the tort. It's like, no,
Like
it sounded like a tree snapped.
You know it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you grew up in gymnastics, though.
Yes.
And your mother was a gymnast.
Yes.
Your dad was a football player. They both went to West Virginia. So you were probably pretty excited about the football game
Very.
recently.
Oh, God, yes.
Is that a problem in your house?
Not so much. I mean, we nothing against Iowa State, you know. So it was fine. But yeah,
So your
No hard
mom,
feelings.
your mom grows up a gymnast. I still don't know who become gymnasts. It's not like something that happens regularly.
Right.
But I suppose if your mother's a gymnast and you're a little girl, is that what you're doing from a very early age as far as sports go?
You know, it's a tough decision as a parent, to be honest with you.
Really?
If you were a gymnast growing up, it puts you through a lot. You know, it's a tough sport. First off, it's a lot of money. It's an expensive sport to go through. It is really hard on the body. It's extremely time consuming. It's all those things, which most sports are, but a lot for gymnastics. So my mom actually wasn't going to put me in gymnastics because of what she'd been through. It's just, you know, like I said, a lot. It's tough. So she was like, I don't want to put her through it. She started me in classes as soon as I could walk. She was like, we'll just do it for, you know, for fun, just
Like,
to,
is this like tumbling? And
you know, yeah, just to
learning
do
how to
like
somersault and cartwheel?
It's good for balance and that sort of thing. So she's like, we'll just put her in it just to do some fun classes, just for something to do. And she said, like a year later, she was like, "Oh crap, she's good." so, and I loved it. So I wanted to stay in it, and I did, and that's kind of how it started.
Wow. When did you find out you were good? Not when your parents found out you were good, but when did you know it's like, hey, I'm in these gymnastics classes and I'm way better than everybody else?
See, I don't know. Maybe it's the way my brain works. Never thought that way. I remember where I was sitting the moment I realized. I was like, oh, I'm kind of good at this. I was in high school. It would have been my sophomore year. I was sitting at the lunch table with a bunch of like the baseball guys and a couple of my girlfriends, and Taco Charlton. I don't know if you know that name.
Yeah,
played for Michigan.
Defensive lineman.
Yeah, we were best friends in high school. He was sitting there, and it was signing day at our high school. And we were all waiting to go into the gym because they did like a whole assembly for it. And everyone was talking to Taco, like, are you so excited to sign? Like, hyping him up and whatever. And I'm just sitting there quiet, listening to Taco talk. And somehow it got brought up. They were like, what are you doing in here? Like, you're a part of this? And I was like, yeah, I'm signing to West Virginia. They're like, for what? And I said, I'm on a full ride for gymnastics to West Virginia. And they were like, bull crap. I'm like, what do you mean? I was like, yeah, I mean, they're paying for me to go to school to do gymnastics. And like, that is not a thing. Gymnastics is not a sport, and they are not paying you. Because a lot of baseball players, like I learned from Jason, full rides aren't common. You know, they split it up into whatever. But full rides for gymnastics are, just because it's, you know, smaller
there's
team,
smaller teams, less of them.
And it makes sense. But they were, you know, under the assumption that gymnastics wasn't even a sport in the first place.
Well, and you probably didn't have a gymnastics team in high school.
There's no gymnastics team in high school. There were a couple in surrounding schools. But, you know, high school gymnastics is a lot different than club. So, yeah, they had no idea why I was even there. And that was the moment I was like, you know what? I am good at this. And I am, you know, they're paying for my education to do this. So
you had to stand your
screw
ground
you guys.
a little bit.
Like,
yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that was kind of the moment that was like, you know what? Yeah, I'm good at it.
Well, so you were a 2-time junior Olympian.
Yeah.
What is that? What is the Junior Olympics for gymnastics?
It's kind of a lot of things. It's so elite gymnastics is a whole different path than, say, like doing high school gymnastics. So elite gymnastics is like twice as many hours. It's just a lot, and it's a big commitment. I mean, these are the kids that homeschool and are doing 2-a-days, you know, which I did for a period of time. But JO Olympics, that was during my elite path. And, you know, I realized at one point that wasn't the path I wanted to go on. I'd rather go to college. It's almost like elite gymnasts make a decision. Do I want to focus more on college or more on the Olympic route? And I knew that I was more of a college gymnast than an Olympic route gymnast. And that awareness is important at a young age, because you have to pick that path very early in your career.
How early do you need to pick that path?
Like by the time you are 7, 8.
Oh, really?
Yes. And I, like I said, I was on that path, and I realized, you know, by the time I was 10 that I wasn't.
10 years old. Mm-hmm. You already know at that age.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, the Olympics, you're 16, you know.
You're right.
And it's,
you're right.
And
the Chinese girls are like 14 and 15.
Literally, yes. So, yeah, you have to have that awareness that early on to decide. Because
did you know at 10 years old, or was your mom like, hey, Brooklyn?
I knew. And the problem with a lot of gymnasts is that they don't know, and they're hearing a lot from their parents that they need to go this route. And obviously not everyone's cut out for Olympic sports, you know, like that's a very, very elite group of people, you know,
because you don't see a lot of the girls on the Olympic team. You know, it's not like one's at West Virginia, one's at Cal, one's at Florida.
Well, that's because they picked their path before then, you know,
like Shawn Johnson or Gabby Douglas. You know, they're really famous around here because they trained at Chow's, but they chose that other path than college.
Yep.
So are there many that choose the college path and then they're late bloomers, or they just choose that path and they end up being good enough anyway?
It's not super common, but it happens. For example, my sister is a gymnast at Alabama right now, and one of her teammates, Shawn Olson, is from Canada, and she still competes for the Canadian Olympic team. So she does her season with Alabama, and almost immediately after goes back to Canada to start training for, you know, Olympic events. I mean, there's the Olympics, and then there's other like worlds and things like that. So
yeah, Pan American Games and just all that stuff. Interesting.
Yeah.
So you're competing along the path to go to college, and you have this bad injury. And what are you, 16, 17 years old when this happens?
Yeah, about 16.
Was there ever a doubt that this happened after you signed with West Virginia. Was there ever a doubt that that scholarship might go away?
I kind of remember my mom panicking about it. I don't remember worrying a ton about it because I was like, Mom, like, and it wasn't like she was mad or disappointed. She was just like, oh crap, like this is a big deal, because it was right before I was going to leave and I needed to, minimum downtime is 6 months, and that's just being.
That's if everything goes right.
That's if everything goes right. So yeah, I just remember her being stressed out about that, and I was just like, I got this. I'll be fine, But that was actually my second surgery. I've had 5. I tied with my dad, who played in the NFL. We always joked. He said, I'm going to catch up to you one of these days. And I did. Not a goal you want to.
Wait a minute. Your dad played in the NFL? You're not going to sneak that one by me. So who did your dad play for? He played at West Virginia in college, defensive back, and then went on. He
played for the Jets. He was playing there the year I was born, 94. I think he played 94 to 96. Yeah, Jets in 94, 96, and then Cowboys right after that. And then he played arena for most of my, young childhood.
Wow.
Yeah.
So do you remember watching your dad play football?
I remember his arena league because he played for the Arizona Rattlers.
Oh, nice.
We lived out in Arizona every summer that he played there. He was gone, most of the year training there, but we'd live there with him in the summers. My whole family would go, and it was some of the best times of my life. I mean,
yeah, that's cool.
We'd swim all day, we'd hang out in the sun, and then we'd go to these games at night, and it was awesome.
Yeah, go watch your dad play football.
Yeah.
So, was there ever a doubt, I guess, when you have these injuries that you weren't going to come back? Because it's one thing to come back from like an ACL injury and play, I don't know, a less impact sport, but it's another thing to like be doing vaults and floor and all of these events, landing hard on your knees, the shoulders doing the bars.
Yeah.
Like these are injuries that aren't going to just magically never go away. They're going to be with you forever.
Right. And for me, I just always thought, like there is no choice. There wasn't a choice for me. These people were paying for my school. I was going to go to school and I was going to do whatever it took to get there. And it was never will I make it back? I was going to make it back. And, I was going to do what it took to do that, which wasn't easy, but I mean, rehabbed the crap out of it and got back. So
let's talk about the events. Okay, so there's different events, guys and girls. The girls do not have the rings. The guys do not have the uneven bars. The guys don't have the balance beam.
No, thank God, right?
The girls don't have the pommel horse.
No.
What else? Are the even rings or the even bars? The guys have that one, which
parallel
is
bars.
The parallel bars. That's a weird one. That's a really stupid event, I think.
It just looks super painful in the armpits. I don't get it. Yeah, it's a lot.
Like, why are we doing it? Can we think of a better event for the guys?
Can we just take it out? Yeah. I feel like we're good there.
Find something. The guys should be doing the uneven bars.
I think so too.
The uneven bars is the outside of the floor. Floor is pretty cool because it's like a dance routine mixed with athleticism. But the uneven bars that the girls have that the guys don't is super exciting. The high bar's okay, but the uneven bars are better. Very
true. Yeah, I don't, I never really thought about it. I don't know why they wouldn't do it. I guess maybe because back in the day, the bars were, like inches apart, and girls would have to slam their hips down on the low bar to do most of the routine. If you get my drift, like.
No, I don't know if I do get your drift.
Like, slam the hips down onto the low bar repeatedly wouldn't necessarily be the best thing for a male, if you get my drift.
Oh, okay. Now, yeah, sorry.
No one would be having kids.
Yes, repeated force to the groin area for the men.
Not a thing.
So that was back in the day before.
That was back in the day before.
But now they're farther apart.
Now they are. So
I guess though it does. The girls do have to do the splits kind of to get between. Guys could probably do that.
But they do that on the high. They do the same kind of stuff on the high bar. So I don't know.
Yeah. So what was your favorite event?
Beam.
The beam?
for sure. Yeah.
Why?
I guess I'm not a super powerful person, so vault and floor weren't always my strong suit. I'm more graceful type, flexible. So beam and bars, you get to show that a little bit more. Didn't require as much power. So it was a good combination for me. The grace, the flexibility, a little bit of power, but not enough,
How are your dismounts?
They're okay. Not my favorite part.
I always got to get a kick out of the dismounts off the beam because, you have vault, you have floor, like there's big dismounts, right? Like you're way up in the air. And then the beam's kind of like, you got to nail that dismount. I don't know how you don't stick that landing because you're just jumping off of the beam right next to you.
Harder than it looks, I'm telling you. I mean,
what's so hard about landing the dismount? I feel like I'd be a great dismounter.
You think you would?
I would definitely be a good one.
I mean, we have days dedicated at practice to sticking dismounts on beam.
Why is it so hard?
Because most of the time it's a blind landing.
But the floor's not gonna. It's not like you're worried about like falling off a step or something.
Yeah, but floor. I mean, look at your surface area. I mean, you can take a step sideways and you can dance it off. If you're landing on beam, it's either you're stuck or you're, taking tenths by taking steps away. So.
Yeah. So you mentioned taking tenths out. Most sports, you're golf, you're competing against the course. Mm-hmm. Most other sports, you're competing against either, competition or another team, right? That's on the field there. In gymnastics, you're competing really against a judge. Like right. You have to, it's one thing to do your routine, but it's another thing to you have to butter the judges up. They have to like you. I'm sure you probably got screwed at some times from judges that didn't like you. And then other times oh, that judge likes me. Yeah. And I know I can do this routine and they're going to score me well. What's that like dealing with, judges? Like subjectivity in your sport.
It is. So for college, it was more of what team you were on. Ooh. Not necessarily the individual. So teams got screwed. Like big time.
Really?
Excuse me. Big time. Because they are automatically going to score a team like Oklahoma, who is, number one in the country. And their gymnastics is beautiful. Don't get me wrong. But it's like that status that, that they are the best and they're going to get the best scores. But what's frustrating is that you will go up against a team like Oklahoma or Florida, and you will have almost identical routines to a team like West Virginia and Oklahoma. And West Virginia girls would get a 9.6 as opposed to the 9.9 that Oklahoma was getting with an identical routine. And it's just frustrating because you work so hard and you put all this time and energy into, making this routine the best you can do. And you're still going to get outscored for absolutely no reason sometimes, which is so frustrating.
So hard mentally.
So hard. Because obviously, like any college sport, like you're working your butt off, and to not get rewarded for that kind of thing is just, it's a punch in the gut every time. It's insane.
Did you have that in your head in certain competitions? Like you're at the Big 12s and you're just like, in the back of your head, you're like, I can nail it here, and I'm still going to get a 9.2.
And it's still not going to matter. Yeah. And it sucks, but our coaches did a really good job of saying, we're here to have fun. We're going to do everything we can. And, we can't change what the judges are going to do about it. So...
Are they corrupt? Are we talking about corruption?
We're talking about
the
corruption.
Judge level?
We are talking corruption here. And it's funny. It's starting to get called out on social media and things like, especially Twitter, because people catch on. It's like, come on. I just watched an identical routine score 3/10 higher, which is, and if you want to talk big scale, that's a big difference on the way a program's looked at, and then that affects who gets recruited, and then that affects how much money's coming to the school. It's really a snowball effect if you think about it, because it's like if you're going to give us these scores, we're not going to be ranked where we want to
Right.
be, then we're not going to get, these top class recruits. Like I said, snowball. It's just ridiculous.
Well, I always wonder that at the Olympics as well. Like in figure skating, in gymnastics, where you have these judges, and then you look behind the curtain and you realize like who these people are sometimes. It's like, oh my gosh, they're getting paid off by people. How do you expect for anything to be fair?
Exactly.
I'm not saying like the Big 12 judges are
No,
corrupt necessarily, but when you have subjectivity to that level where like 2/10 can make a massive difference,
which they do.
you got to start asking the questions.
And it really stinks, It's like I said, you put all this hard work in, and it's like sometimes like for what? If we're not going to be treated fairly, what's the point? But again, we were told, we're here to have fun. We're going to do our best. We're going to do what we can. And
Well, it's not that fun.
It's not that fun.
Well, to that point, though, has there the flip side of it? Did you ever have a routine where like, boy, I didn't deserve that score that I got in a good way?
Yes, once. I did like a very mediocre bar routine once, and I went 9-8, and I was like, are we sure? I don't feel like I deserve that, but I mean, you know what? I'll take it because you didn't score me right the last time, so fine.
Did you do the all around, or did you just do individual events? How does that work in college? All I know is what I watched in the Olympics, so I don't even know how college gymnastics works.
So club gymnastics, everyone does all 4 events, regardless. So when you get to college, it's kind of nice because you can pick. You can choose, I'm going to be a specialist and only do vault or only do beam. But I specialized in bars and beam because that's what they needed me on the most, and that's what I was the best at. So that's what I did. I occasionally trained floor and vault, but I mostly focused on bars and beam because I knew that's what I'd compete in.
Nice. So going back to the judges real quick, because you talked about social media and how, with social media now you can get something trending. And the thing that trended like a year ago was, I think she went to UCLA and she had like this floor routine, and I don't remember her name. You probably remember her name.
Dennis.
Yes. Her. She had this great floor routine, and she was like dancing, and she was phenomenal, and she was nailing every landing, and it went viral like 100 times over on social media. Mm-hmm. Was that routine as good as it warranted on social media?
So funny story. Nia Dennis actually was a club gymnast with me.
Your bud?
Yes. And my sister's best friend.
No way.
Yeah. So I knew her when she was tiny, and knew right away she was good. I mean, you just know sometimes, and she was one of those girls. I was like, wow, you're gonna go places, kid. And it's funny, as a gymnast, it doesn't matter how old you are, what level you are, you can still look at someone younger than you and almost look up to them in a way. And she was one of those girls. Oh my gosh, you were really good and you're going to do great things. So what you were saying.
Because what I saw in that video, and I know nothing about gymnastics, is just a gymnast that just had charisma coming out of her ears.
Yes.
Right. And she was like doing a dance routine type of thing.
Very much a performance.
It was a performance. Yes. Great word. And so I watched it, and I'm watching 40 seconds of this, right? So I didn't watch the whole thing. And I thought, well, it was really fun to watch. I have no idea if that was good gymnastics or not.
And that's the thing. She's kind of a whole package kind of girl. She has the skills, and she has the fun dance, and she's charismatic, and she gets the crowd going. And in college gymnastics, that's what it's about.
Win the crowd.
It's about the performance. It's about selling it to the judges, the crowd, and that's who's going to get the biggest scores.
How do you sell uneven bars routine?
That's a little different. Floor is easy to sell. You've got the music, you've got the dance, that's fine. Bars, you can only do so much. Beam, you can only do so much. Vault, I mean, floor is really where people shine. So
yeah. So you said your sister was best friends with this girl.
Yes.
And is your sister as good as her? Is your sister better than you?
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
Very much so. She another younger girl that I actually look up to. We were in the same level. We were both level 10s at the same time. And
What's that mean?
Sorry. So, level 4 is the lowest it goes. I mean, there's classes and, that kind of thing. And then you go to level 4, level 5, level 6, level 7,
Are you
up
getting
to
like
10.
black belts or like who determines what level you're on?
Based on your skills. So if you have the right skills to move up a level, then you do. So once you have those, that's just where you're at. So we ended up in the same level, even though we're 6 years apart. And I look back at pictures, and she's just this tiny little thing, and I'm just a teenager, And I always knew she was better than me, and I knew she'd go somewhere great, and she did. So yeah, I don't even remember your question anymore, but I was rambling about my sister. Something about Nia.
Well, was there ever a moment where I guess you were on a path at age 10?
Yeah.
But you recognized really early on that your sister is way better than you, and that's clear. So did she ever pursue the other path, the Olympic path?
She was on that path for that elite path for way longer than I was. And then she kind of went through the same thing I did. She made it further than I did. And
injuries?
No, knock on wood. None in club gymnastics, which is kind of amazing. So yeah, no setbacks that way. So yeah, she stayed on that path longer than I did. Ended up at a amazing school, and kid's unbelievable.
Yeah, she's at Alabama.
Yeah.
And we all know Alabama for football, but do they treat the gymnasts well down there, or is it all football?
They are very well taken care of.
Oh, good.
Very well, yes. They're normally top 5, so they're treated well.
So, yeah, you've mentioned Alabama, Florida, Oklahoma. Who else is in that top 5, the cream of the crop in college gymnastics?
UCLA is usually up there. Georgia occasionally. Michigan's really good. Yeah, those are just a few that come to mind. So
this is maybe a topic you don't want to talk about, but you brought up Michigan, and I thought of Michigan State right away. So the big scandal at Michigan State was they had this team doctor there that was massaging girls inappropriately for like 30 years. Yeah. For like an insane amount of time. And I read some of that stuff, and I had to stop reading it because it was appalling. And what I thought of the entire time was like, how could this guy get away with it? How could he trick so many, maybe not girls, because maybe girls were just doing what they were told to do. Right. But then also there were parents in the room. Yeah. So is there a lot of stuff in gymnastics where it's like you just are doing what you're told because this is the way it's been done for 30 years and Bella Caroli did it this way, so now you have to do it this way, and you just don't ask questions? Or how does something like that possibly happen? And it really sucks, and it's really sad, the entire thing. And I hate to put gymnasts in this category, but it's just a group of... You're just so naive and very, gymnasts as a whole are very naive and sheltered. Spend a lot of time in the gym. I mean, gymnastics is, if you're a serious gymnast, that is your entire life. I mean, it's, everything else is second, So when kids are going to school dances and these like parties are starting to pop up, that kind of thing, you're never around that kind of stuff, So it's very much, gymnastics is my entire life. My coaches know best. These people know best. And that's who I'm going to listen to. Right. And a lot of times gymnastics coaches are very intense, very tough. And you don't question them, And this is the same for, a lot of sports. Yeah. They're just hard on you. And most of the time they mean well. And sometimes they don't. And you're just taught to not question and go along with it. And so it sucks to say this, but it's easy for me to see how this happened. Just in my experience, it's, and this sounds terrible to say, but if I were in that position when I was 8, 9 years old, I don't know that I would have known what to say or what to do. And it's interesting. I actually crossed paths with Larry Nassar many times.
I was at Bella Caroli's ranch at training camps all the time. We had, since I lived in Ohio, we had gymnastics meets in Michigan all the time. So this meet in particular, I crashed on bars back in like the warm-up gym. So it was just during warm-ups. I had a horrible concussion. I ended up in the training room with Larry and my parents. And, you know, I just laid there. My parents were in there. I was laying there in a dark room. I couldn't open my eyes. I was badly, badly concussed. But anyway, nothing happened. I'm not just saying that. But and I say this because, again, I see how easily it did happen. I was laying there, you know, in a very vulnerable state, and nothing happened to me. But you can see how it happened to so many other girls, you know. So, yeah, very sick person. And it's just, you know, this sounds terrible too, but it's an easy sport for a predator. I mean, if you're a sick person who likes little girls in leotards, you know what I mean? Then that's where you're going to go. So,
yeah, that's kind of,
you've got to, I mean, I hope after all of this came out that parents are teaching their kids to advocate for themselves, and coaches are looking out for their girls, and, you know, it doesn't happen anymore.
You went to Bella Caroli's ranch?
Mm-hmm. A bunch of times.
I mean, that seems like a big deal, right?
That's when I was on that path, that elite path. Yeah, I went all the time.
So was it Bella and Marta? Was it Marta?
Yes,
Caroli?
Marta. Mm-hmm.
Wasn't Marta kind of the one that ran the show?
Nuts. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Were you
very
scared
intense.
as heck of them?
Of Marta, yes. So Bella actually just kind of rode around in a golf cart the whole time. He, like, you know, around the ranch, he was never really in the gym.
He was checking the fences.
Literally, like, checking on the donkeys. Like, he just didn't, he wasn't really a part of the gymnastics part. But Marta was, and she was scary.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Was she
Very
the scariest coach
intimidating.
you ran into?
She's probably up there. Yeah.
Was Marta doing stuff differently than other coaches that you had? Like, was there something that you saw in hers like, oh, I get why she produced great gymnasts?
Nothing other than just, I mean, she was just harsh. And, you know, like, if you're harsh on anyone, they're going to do what you want them to do, you know? So it wasn't necessarily she was just doing something, you know, no one else has done. It was just that she is this intimidating presence, and we're going to listen and do whatever she says.
Yeah, the room probably changes when she comes in.
Absolutely. I mean, to the point where if we were running around at practice, you know, doing our thing, if she walked by, you were, you know, like military stance, hands by your side, like presenting yourself for her. Like, we were trained to do that.
So you mentioned that your coaches at West Virginia wanted you to have fun.
Yes.
Seems like a lot more laid back atmosphere than maybe the Carolis and maybe a lot of the experiences that other girls might have in either the elite side or the collegiate side. Experience at West Virginia, good?
Yes. And I say that, like, our coaches wanted us to have fun, and we were known as the fun team on the competition floor. Like, we would get into it when, you know, we memorized all of our teammates' floor routines. So we're doing that on the side. And, you know, if you're not having fun with it, what the heck are you doing? You know, you make it so far through club gymnastics, and it's like college for a lot of people is that, like, exclamation point on their career. You know, like, this is it. There's no next step. Right. You know, like there is for baseball, basketball. There's no professional, you know, aspect of it. So once you're done, you're done. This is not to say they weren't tough on us. I mean, it was hard. It was hard work, and they were tough on us, but
they allowed you to have fun too.
We were allowed to have fun too.
That's good. You gotta have fun. Sports are supposed to be fun.
I mean, isn't that the point of it? Isn't that why we do it?
You do it to win, but and winning is fun.
Winning is fun.
There should be some fun along the way.
Yeah.
Win or lose.
Right.
And that's why you have to have good teams and good teammates and chemistry and camaraderie, all that stuff. But, you know, we are trying to win here. I mean, when you were talking about the judges, I can see you're still ticked off about some of those scores.
Oh, God. It makes me shake. It's just, it is so frustrating. It's so frustrating. So hopefully it changes someday. We'll see.
If you ever have little girls, will you let the little girls, or will you encourage them? I mean, we got Chow's right here in town.
I know it.
You could send them down to Chow's.
And I sent Jet to Chow's. I mean,
really?
I started him right when we moved here, and he loved it. But obviously that's a totally different thing. You know, I go back and forth with it all the time. I don't know if I would do it. Gymnastics brought me the best things in my life, but it also brought me the worst. So it's tough. And I think it's one of those things where maybe I'll start her out and see if she likes it, but then I see it going how it went for my mom, and I ended up being good at it, and I stuck with it, and I don't.
Yeah, your kids are probably going to be good at it.
I just don't know if I want that for them. I want what they want. We'll see.
So speaking of your kids, Jet, I should say, your oldest Jet, he came kind of right in the middle of your career.
Oh, he sure did. He sure did.
So you had Jet in college.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was that experience like for you?
Oh, man, buckle up. So that was a roller coaster. And you know what? Looking back on it, it's a blur. I mean, it was like survival mode to the fullest. So I had him my junior year. I had him July of 2016, and I knew the second we found out we were pregnant with him, I'm like, you know what, not a question. I'm going back. I'm too close not to, you know. And what kind of message does it send to my kids if I don't finish something I started? It was a lot bigger than just gymnastics for me. So.
And when you say going back, you mean going back to finish school, or you knew right away you were going back to compete?
To compete. And if I was going to compete, well, I'm going to get my education with it. Yeah, obviously, you know, like it was a package deal. So yeah, had him July 1st, 2016. Jason and I moved into our college apartment, August 1st, and practice started that week too. So I was 4 weeks postpartum. And I remember putting on one of my, you know, team issued T-shirts and shorts. And I was like, oh God, this is going to be a long road, you know?
Hold on. You went to practice?
So here's the thing. We moved in exactly 4 weeks after he was born. I hadn't had I'm sure you know with Tori, the 6-week postpartum checkup. Hadn't had that yet. So practice had started and I hadn't been cleared. So I had to drive back to Ohio to my doctor, get cleared, and I started practice right away once that was done. And, you know, it was just, I was like, I have to wear what? You know, I'm like, it was hard to picture.
I guess I didn't know the exact timeline. I didn't know Jet's birthday. I was thinking Jet was born closer to the spring. So he was July. So you got back to practice 6 weeks later.
Yeah.
And end up competing that year.
Yes, I started training middle August, and I competed in the very first meet.
Which was when?
End of December.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I think what helped is they let me train with the team while I was pregnant. So I got.
How long did you train while you were pregnant? Like up until 4 months or 3 months?
Up until school ended, which was May. I had him July 1st. So I went. I know, it sounds crazy, and I never really sit down and talk about it, which is the wheels are turning. I'm like, oh my gosh, and you know, having 2 more after this, I'm like, I did what? You know, it's just crazy to think about. But I was in the weight room with my team. I modified whatever core we were doing. If we were climbing the rope, I was like, I'll do pull-ups instead. Yeah.
And you had a belly. You had a belly.
I was pregnant, like 6-7 months pregnant.
Were you self-conscious about it? Were your teammates making fun of you? Like, what was this like?
So it was kind of nice that it just so happened to be in the best shape of my life at that point. So I didn't show for a while. You know, I sat down with my coaches and made a game plan. I was like, am I allowed out on the floor because I had to miss that my whole junior season, obviously. Yeah. And I considered it for a minute. I was like, maybe if I don't tell him for a few months, I can squeeze a couple meets in. But I figured that would be putting the baby at risk. So I did it. So I was like, can I be out on the floor and cheer for my teammates? Can I be there? And when I start showing, do you want me out there? And they were like, well, maybe when you start showing, you can just sit in the stands. Because I was like, this is awkward. Like, I don't want to put anyone else in a awkward position. And luckily, through season, I never was showing, so I could hide it with a jacket. And I was out there, and no one knew. Other teams didn't know. So it was funny. My senior night, they go through your career stats, and your family walks out with you. And they announced me, and they said, Brooklyn Doggette, with her mom, dad, sisters, brothers, fiance Jason, and son Jet. And you should have seen the other team's faces. I mean, they turned their heads so fast. Everyone started chit-chattering, and I was like, oh my God. Clearly being the center of attention. They were like, her son? Because I had just competed.
Yeah,
it was confusing.
Everybody's doing the math.
Like, what? Yeah, so that was funny.
So how long after you had Jet, you're back practicing within 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. And you were competing at the first meet, 4 months later in December. But how long before you started to feel like yourself or feel like an athlete again?
Yeah.
Maybe right away, or I don't know.
No, it takes, obviously your body goes through a lot. A lot.
I've been in the room. I haven't
That's it. Thank God, because otherwise this wouldn't be, hitting home. But
I told her after fifth came, I was like, hey, take a couple of months off.
Never leave the couch again.
It was the most intense 45 minutes I've ever experienced. I remember saying to Tori, and all of a sudden we're talking about childbirth here, but I remember saying, well, really to anybody who would listen, was like, I've never been more proud of anybody doing anything than I was of my wife for those 45 minutes she was pushing like heck to get fits out.
That makes me cry.
And it's just an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And it's like you've never seen somebody work that hard before.
No, because no one has ever worked that hard before.
Yeah. It's just a totally different deal. And then I just can't imagine
everything afterwards,
it doesn't stop there. Like, you don't just go home and you're like, okay, I'm going to go out on a jog now. It's like, no. There's a lot of, 9 months of buildup, and your body changes all this stuff. Mm-hmm. I can't even begin to imagine.
And then you've got a newborn.
And then you have the newborn. We're not even talking about that.
A newborn on top of everything you're going through.
So how did this? This is incredible.
Thank you. I don't know. Is that a compliment? I don't know. It's more of like, you're insane.
No, it's absolutely incredible. I really think we've had like 227 episodes here of the podcast, and this is one of the most incredible things ever. We had a guy set a world record shooting a bow and arrow with his feet.
Oh, what?
That might be number 2. You coming back and competing 4 months after giving birth might be number 1, though.
Oh, this is awesome.
So back to you. I'm rambling now, but
we started talking about childbirth. We could go on for hours.
When did you start feeling athletic again?
I never felt 100%, back to where I was before I had him. You never quite get there. I felt enough of myself, to do my sport, but, things change. And, it's not like I was a basketball player and I could throw on some baggy basketball shorts. I had to wear a tight leotard. You know what I mean? Like,
they don't get any tighter.
It does not get any more exposing. So that was a big deal. I was really worried about that. It ended up being okay. Luckily, we're allowed to wear shorts and like tank tops to practice, but competitions, no. Anyway, I ended up doing 2-a-days with our strength coach I couldn't even hang onto the bar. I'd lost my forearm strength. I'd lost a lot of strength, and that's everything when you're, a gymnast. So I ended up doing 2-a-days on top of classes and on top of practice with a newborn. But I had to. There was no other way I was going to get there.
Were you guys sleeping at all?
I don't remember sleeping much. No.
Yeah, was Jason doing, like, you're going to school, you're doing 2-a-days. Jason and Jed are just at home, like trying to survive?
Jason, yes. Jet sat on Jason's lap playing video games for the first 8 months of his life. It is a miracle this kid knows the ABCs. I mean, smartest kid I've ever met. And it is a miracle. Because, I mean, yeah, they just sat there all day and played video games. And, you know, occasionally they'd take a walk. But, you know, had no other choice, really.
As a mother, you know, that first year, you're gone a lot.
Yeah.
You know, and you have this emotional connection to Jet, who was growing inside of you for the previous 9 months. And all of a sudden it's like, you have him and you're like, hey, see ya, kid. This is a crude way of saying it. But like, see ya, I'm going to go do 2 days. I got to go to school. I got to finish my education. I got to finish my gymnastics career. Like, from an emotional standpoint, I'm sure that wasn't easy.
It was tough, but, you know, it was the only choice at the time. You know, I had to do what I had to do. And it sucked, but I think that I was around more than I thought I would be. And that doesn't sound true when you actually, you know, hear my schedule. But Jason brought him to every single meet. I mean, travel meets, all of them. He was at every single meet. So, you know, a typical day would be we'd have some sort of strength workout, something in the morning, like 5 or 6 a.m. He'd still be sleeping. And then we'd have, you know, I'd have a class at 8. So I'd be there. I'd finish my workout. I'd go back home really quick, kiss Jet, and go to class for a couple hours, make my way to practice, go to practice for a few hours, train again, and then go back home. So, you know, we had training tables, the meals that they give you, and I was skipping those and going straight home. So I'd end up being home from like 6 on. So, you know, it's like a working mom, you know, you kiss your kids bye at 8 a.m. and see them at 5. I mean,
it's like a working mom, but you were 20 or 21 years old.
I was 21.
And you were a college athlete at the time. So it's a little bit different.
It's a little different. And then I'd have
my
homework.
A gamer for a daycare.
Then there's Jason, you know. It was, and then since I was a senior, I had like my internship that I had to do at a daycare. And it was tough because I was with all these other kids all day, you know, taking care of them. I'm like, my kid's at home. It sucks. But I knew that it was going to be a fleeting 8 months and then it would be over. And it was in a flash, you know. Yeah. And I'm proud of myself for doing it. I'm glad I did it. I think it was important, even though, and it's funny, it's like I'm not even necessarily using my degree. I'm not working. But it was the principle of it all, you know. Yes.
When your kids are going to grow up knowing that mom did that.
Yeah.
Which is pretty darn cool. Yeah. I mean, just congrats.
Thank you.
For doing that. It's so amazing. I remember hearing that. Well, I had known Jason a little bit prior. And then I remember he had come back here for something. He was kind of coming on with Holmes Murphy at that time. And I remember talking to him about what was going on. He's like, yeah, Brooklyn, she's going back to school. And I just assumed you were done. Like, they're having a baby. I thought you had already were done with school. And I was like, wait a minute, what's going on right now?
Yeah.
You're at home with the kid? And I was like, whoa, this is next level.
Yeah. It was a lot of moving parts for a while there.
Is this common? Like, do a lot of gymnasts have children and then come back? Does this happen a lot, or
like not a thing at all? Like, definitely not a thing. I mean, it's happened. There was like a Russian gymnast, for example, in the Olympics. She's been to like 4 Olympics and she has like multiple kids. But it was one of those things where that was her source of income. So she had, you know, it was one of those deals. But college, it's almost unheard of. Right.
I've heard of women having children in running.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
And like a lot of women, like I'm an expert here, but it's been said on this podcast. I remember Lisa Ewell, who was an All-American at Iowa State. She has a baby, and she had said that a lot of women runners will have children and then come back afterwards, and they'll be better after the baby than they were before the baby because of the changes that go through their body, and they become like, so a lot of women marathoners the best female marathoners have had children.
Interesting.
And for whatever reason.
Good for them.
Yeah, I don't
Not
know
the
if that's
case for me.
causation or correlation, you know? But gymnastics is a totally different thing. Like,
it is, yeah.
It's just a lot different. You're flying through the air. I mean, just
Well, and two, you could run up until, if you want to, it wasn't me, you can run up until the day you give birth, you know? It's not going to feel the same. You may not want to, but I like doctor's orders. You're not flipping, you know? Like, it's, you know, it's
the
that
balance
part of it's
beam
different.
gets a little out of balance when you have the
When
kid.
I'm landing on directly on my stomach from 12 feet in the air, probably not a good call, you know?
Well, and now you have 2 more kids.
Yeah, 2 more. Yeah, we've got a whole pack. And that's why I said, like, after the 3rd one, I'm like, oh my gosh. Sometimes I look back on it, I'm like, how did I do that? It's, you know, after each kid, it takes a little longer to get back to yourself. So, I mean, here I am 7 months postpartum. Like, did I give birth last week? No, it's been 7 months. Oh, I should probably, like, do a crunch or 2. Nah. Like, you know, you just, it's
Do you
just
feel
different.
like you're getting better at it?
I don't know if I'm getting better at it. I just kind of know what to expect, you know?
Yeah.
And every kid's different. You don't know exactly what to expect, but it's like, you at least have an outline. There's a blueprint there, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's helpful.
So the way we end every episode of our podcast is with the 5 big questions.
Mm-hmm.
And our sponsor for this season of the podcast is the People's Company. They are an agricultural farming based company. And so you're not a native Iowan.
I'm
right?
not. No.
And so I wanted to ask you some kind of Iowa specific questions here, being that People's Company is our sponsor. First question, you grew up in Ohio, spent a lot of time in West Virginia.
Yeah.
Ties to West Virginia here. What's one thing about Iowa that in your time here that has stuck out as being your favorite thing at Iowa that you didn't have at home?
Good question. I don't know. I like the sense of community here. It reminds me a lot of Columbus, Ohio. It's just a smaller scale, which I appreciate. There's a ton of stuff for kids to do, which I super love. I'm very into, you know, all the things that Des Moines has to offer for kids. But yeah, just a good little community. Yeah.
I like that.
That's my favorite part.
What's the flip side of that? What's one thing that Iowa doesn't have that you had back home?
A big, really good mall. Jordan Creek.
Yeah. So, I mean, Jordan Creek is the premier mall of Iowa.
Yeah.
And 20 years ago, probably now, it used to be Valley West. And now Valley West is like a ghost land. I mean, malls are kind of going the way of the dodo.
That's true. That is
But
true.
what's a good mall in Columbus look like compared to? I mean, Jordan Creek's pretty cool.
Oh my gosh. Not.
So what are we missing from? Is it stores? Is it
like restaurants, stores? There's a movie theater inside of
There's a
them. I
movie
know there's
theater.
a movie. Okay. But it's not quite the same. There's like our mall has like. Okay, you guys have 2 stories too. But there's like actual like places you want to go inside. You know, like I feel like Jordan Creek is occupied by those like window shopping type places. There's like real legit stores at our mall, you know? And it's like it's a nice
wait a
place
minute.
to
You
walk
live here
around.
now.
Oh yeah. It's great.
So do you take the kids like in the winter? Do they run around the mall? I mean, that's got to be a mom hack, right?
It definitely is. Well, obviously COVID just ruined everything, but we'd go to the mall playground like daily in the winter. We haven't been there in a while, but the mall playground was a saving grace for sure.
Yeah.
And it's a good place to walk. I mean, you know,
Gotta get your steps in.
inside.
Get out of the house.
Why not? Throw the kids in a stroller. Yeah, fine.
What's one store that Jordan Creek does not have that they need?
There are no kid stores at that mall. There's only Gap. They need there's H&M now, but they need like a Zara. Zara would be great. They have adult clothes and kid clothes.
Okay, Zara. I didn't even know that was a retail store. I thought it was just an online store. Tori's told me about Zara before.
Zara's the best, and they need one here.
So you spent a lot of time road tripping through club gymnastics, college gymnastics. what's your go-to like road trip food, snack, or favorite stop to get food while you're on the road?
We're talking like gas stations or like fast food.
Either one. This is your question. It's your podcast, Brooklyn.
And it's all about me. Okay. Go to. Oh my gosh. You know? Ooh. Well, it's here now, which kind of ruins it. But Cane's.
Oh, Raising
Love
Cane's?
Cane's, yes. That was in Ohio and like kind of exclusive at the time there. And now it's here. So that's great.
Did you have like a snack on the bus that you'd always have?
You know, food was a tough topic.
Was it?
Gymnastics. I won't get into it much.
Because of like weight and you got to fit a certain profile and all that stuff?
Yes. Like we're talking, if we got Olive Garden, you know, after a meet, they took our breadsticks, you know, that kind of stuff.
Really?
So they would provide the snacks. Usually it'd be like a bowl of apples and bananas.
Man. So I wondered about that because the girls are so little that like a big meal can, you know, make a big difference because they're so little.
Well,
but you also are burning so many calories doing what you're doing.
Not enough, apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, very.
That's
very
kind of the
strict
dark
rules
side
around
of
it.
some of
Sucks
that,
so
right?
much, which is another reason it's like if I have a daughter, don't love that part of it either, you know. That sucks.
What's one moment from your gymnastics career that when you think back on, you know, everything that you love about gymnastics, when you close your eyes at night, is there a moment that sticks in your head?
I mean, I guess it doesn't directly relate to the sport, but it brought me my husband and it brought me Jet, you know. At the end of the day, my mom did not put me in that class when I was 1, I wouldn't have my kids. I wouldn't have Jason, you know. Yeah. And obviously that's, again, not directly related to gymnastics itself, but you know, it's one of those things where it's like, I would not have any of this if it weren't for this sport. The sport itself, I do feel like it brought me a sense of like responsibility. Like I cannot be late anywhere. You know, we got in trouble for being late, so I know not to be late. It gave me discipline, you know, and all sorts of different aspects of my life. So, you know, it brought me those key aspects that, you know, every adult needs, you know?
Right.
So I appreciate it for that. There are some things I don't appreciate about it, but you know, that's a different story.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Oh gosh, really put me on the spot here, Tim.
Yep. Yeah.
Best advice? Is it terrible if I don't have one? No, I don't know that I have any.
All of the great coaches you had, your mother, your father, your little sister who you look up to, they never gave you one nugget
No one
of
ever
advice.
gave me advice. They just yelled at me. Just kidding. I didn't mean that about my mom and dad. My stinking coaches. I guess this never really came from anyone, but I like be here now. That is one that stuck out to me. I don't know who said it. I don't know where it came from, but it's one that I like now as a mom, you know? It's one of those things where it's like I could be doing 1,000 other things, but right now I need to be sitting here with my kids and doing this. And I guess to relate it back to a sport, you know, you're trying to do a million things at once, trying to get assignments done and trying to meet, you know, a school, trying to meet deadlines. But now I feel like that kind of thing is important, you know?
I like that a lot. I think about that from a parenting side of things sometimes when, you know, you get home from work and I'm watching Fitz and I'm kind of distracted by the TV or by my phone or something.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, Fitz has 45 minutes before he goes to bed.
Right.
And Dad doesn't need to be on his phone right now.
Right. I know.
And I think about that sometimes as it relates to sports too, like you were saying. Like in college, you know, you'd be able to put the phone away because you had practice and you could really
in your locker and
lock in and get focused on the sport. And now so often I feel like my attention is just being pulled in 5 different directions with all the, my laptop or my phone or whatever else is going on through the day. So be here now.
Because there's a million things you can be doing in a day. But it's like when 10 years from now, we're not going to look back and remember a laundry pile on the floor. We're going to remember, being turned around, seeing our kids' first steps. And that's what's important. So.
Do you consider yourself an Iowan yet?
I think I'm there.
You are there.
I really do love it here. Yeah. Even though you guys have a crappy mall, I love it here.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like every mall is going to crap. I feel like you're remembering the Columbus malls from when you were like a kid and malls were cool. I feel like every mall is kind of stinks now.
I don't know, Tim. I need you to go to Easton in Columbus. I need you to go. I need you guys to go, please.
That's the deal. I was in Columbus this past year, and it was my first time ever to Columbus. We were there for a golf tournament, the Memorial. Big golf tournament, Brooklyn. You never heard about the golf? Is it Brooklyn?
Can we skip this part?
But I have not been to the Easton Mall. I'm sure it's way better than Jordan Creek.
You know it is.
Yeah. Well, Brooklyn, thank you so much for coming on. Our very first gymnast here on the pod, and mother to boot. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to our interview with Brooklyn McMurray. And thank you guys for following the show, supporting the show. Last week, where we had Larry Bittner and we also had Matt Adams and Andrew Zelmer on, last week was our biggest week we've ever had here on the podcast. It was the most downloads we've ever had on the podcast by about 150. So it was pretty close, but also it blew by over 100 downloads. So thank you guys for supporting the show. In honor of that, we have brought back the Moonlighter shirts. So we had sold out of Moonlight Graham Show shirts recently here, and we just printed some new ones in both red, blue, and yellow. So if you want some red, blue, and yellow Moonlighter shirts for that special someone for this Christmas season, they work great as a workout shirt. They work great as maybe a nighttime shirt for your wife. They work even better as the best shirt in your t-shirt collection, the day drinking shirt with your buddies. So if you are interested in that, head over to our website, purchase a new shirt. And thank you guys for listening to the pod. It's really fun to see it grow. I was really blown away over the last couple of weeks here as just the podcast has continued to grow, and looking at those download numbers on kind of a daily basis and thinking, wow, this is pretty amazing. So thank you guys so much for doing that. Update on Cosner Quest. Yellowstone just premiered the other night. Kevin's not returning my phone calls. Not sure if that's a big surprise to you or not, but had felt like we had a little bit of momentum going there, and then things have gone silent the last couple of weeks. So if you know Kevin out there, if you've got his email address, if you got a cell phone number, shoot him a text. If you got his email, shoot him an email and said, hey, get back to Tim. Kevin, you need to come on the Moonlight Graham Show. But, thanks to our team, Andy, Neil, Tommy, Brendan, and Brian. They are the best in the business. They're a big part of why this podcast continues to grow. And if you out there don't have your Moonlighter shirts yet, you need one for the Christmas season, head over to our website or shoot me a DM. We'll get one sent out your way. But thank you guys so much for listening to not only this week's episode with Brooklyn McMurray, but coming along for the last 227 episodes as well. It's been a fun ride. Have a great week, Moonlighters.
It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. It's a pretty good program, broadcasting to the heartland. Sports stories for the everyman. It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. Please follow us on Instagram. You're loving us on Twitter too. You download every pod we do. It's Moonlight Graham.